BobJ fans, hey, this is Bruno with Wisdom 360 Suites, live from the awesome city of Boston. Let's kick it in. Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Bruno. Thank you. Good morning, BobJ fans as well.
Thank you very much, Patrick. So, Patrick, today the topic is BI 2024.
Right.
So, the reason I've actually asked you to present that topic is I know we had a brief exchange about that at the last federal user group we had about a month ago.
Right.
And the entire audience was extremely interested to understand what BI 2024 was, what was going to be included in the version. And it seems to be in the community that a lot of people thought, hey, 4.3 is the last version of BobJ. So is that true or not?
It was true as of January, but as of June, it is no longer true. So,
you know what? After being for so many years in the industry together, I heard that since 4.1. So each time, oh, there's going to be nothing after 4.1. And then after that, you got 4.2. And then after that, you got 4.3. So,
although the only difference here, though, is that it's not that there was going to be nothing after 4.3. It's that we were trying to move people to our private cloud edition version of it at that point. But, and to your point, since we're talking it through, we found, though, that while many of the customer base were excited to keep on with business objects because of the unique value it brings compared to other tools out there, that the kind of notion of moving to the cloud off of on-prem was still too fast for them.
mm-hmm.
And so we've got this at least one intermediary, and who knows, as you just mentioned with the 4.1, there could be more intermediaries even still. And we'll kind of walk through that a little bit.
And we see so many customers today. They've invested a lot in business objects. They love BobJ. And today, in terms of reporting and scheduling today, that's still the best solution out there.
Absolutely.
Of course, there are other great solutions, as you know, like SAC for dashboards. But today, in terms of traditional reporting, the ones that you get in your inboxes, for example, every day,
right,
sales, inventory, etc. Typically, this is done with BobJ.
It's not always the sexy, cool visual, but it's something that's been there for years, and it's going to continue to be because it's necessary.
So anyway, I'm glad to hear that. So that's now clear.
Me too.
So, and I'm sure it's the same for the entire audience. So, well, Patrick, do you have any presentation you want to show us?
I do. Yes. Can you see the screen?
We can definitely see your screen.
All right.
Sure.
Well, let's start with kind of what you and I have been saying. First and foremost, SAP continues to evolve business objects. That is a direct quote from product. It's a direct quote from the executive board. And so it is our direction forward that we will have business objects continuing to get some love and R&D work. Now, that's in the midst, though, of, as Bruno rightly mentioned, SAP Analytics Cloud, which really is our kind of innovation vision for analytics, because it will be the embedded analytic capability within all of our SAP Cloud suite. But again, we do continue to evolve BobJ, both on-prem and in its journey to the cloud. And importantly as well, since we will have two parallel platforms still, we do continue to invest in the hybrid interoperability between the two. So that's the overall strategy, but yes, BobJ is still here to stay. The current evolution, where we are currently with BobJ, is we have Business Objects 4.3, as Bruno mentioned. And that was all about modifying and improving and simplifying, I'd say, the user experience and also harmonizing the user experience. It's about hybrid connectivity and the usual enhanced enterprise readiness. At the same time, as mentioned, we've been pushing the Business Objects Private Cloud Edition, which is, essentially, it's really kind of a IaaS and PaaS combined, where we run all of the care and feeding and the machinery in the data center for you, and you simply continue to maintain your BobJ enterprise, universes, things like that, documents, reports. And we're hoping to move to that sooner, but again, feedback from you, the customer community, was that we kind of needed to put a little bit of a pause on that. So we do still have BobJ PCE, as a lot of customers are standing up now. I dealt with 3 different customers all doing enterprise stand-ups this week. Several of them, very old BobJ customers, and they're very happy to move to the private cloud edition. But the good news for you, as of June 2022, as laid out in our BI statement of direction, we no longer are forcing you to go to PCE at the end of 4.3. Visually, this is what it looks like. So as most of you hopefully know, 4.2 ends priority 1 support at the end of 2024. It ends mainstream maintenance at the end of this year. And then, so I'm hoping that most of you have at least started looking at moving to 4.3 if you've not gone there yet. But we now have that nice little interlude of BobJ, as Bruno mentioned, codenamed BI 2024. It could become 4.3. It could be, 4.4. It could become 5.0. It may stay as 2024. Who knows? But the good news is it remains an on-prem option after 4.3.
We can probably take some bets on that. So
absolutely,
and especially at SAP with all the marketing, there are always name changes, etc. So
exactly.
Yes. And once it's out, we can predict within 2 years the name will change or something like that. So.
Well, we have our fingers crossed whenever we say that, but yes, always hopeful. And then as you can see below the gray line being the code line. So one key thing, there seems to be a misconception about Private Cloud Edition that it's somehow a new thing of business objects. It's a new offering from us, but it is essentially business objects in the cloud. And so it's the same code line. It's the same everything. It's forever. Right now, the current BobJ PCE version is 4.3 Service Pack 1. And, we'll have the turnover to Service Pack 2 sometime this month. And BobJ PCE will go to that turnover as well. So, again, good news there. If we force you to go to PCE, it's still the same code line, still good to go. But we do have that intermediary now of BobJ 2024. And what that means, too, is that we always have the 7-year runway cycle within SAP. So you can expect that BobJ 2024 will go till 2031 at least.
Well, actually, I see based on this roadmap, in fact, what's interesting here is there is no end of life. So you see 2029, but actually the blue line of BI 2024 is still going on even after that. So that's actually pretty exciting. And that's actually the first time I've seen that.
That's kind of our fingers crossed bet right there, is that, it'll go past 31 somehow.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I recall when we're doing the same presentations, maybe 2 years ago or so, 4.3, there was a clear end of life. And here, basically, I think there is going to be no end of life. So, and so that's actually
hopefully,
yeah. Well, anyway, that's quite interesting. And so additionally, yes, on the main code line, that was always a concern from from our customers and from all the installed bases. Hey, is PC going to be the same version than the current version of BobJ? And I guess that clears the debate. So
yep, absolutely. There are some differences though, and we'll get into those next.
Okay.
And it really comes down to this, right? While we're keeping it alive, there's been a lot of discussion about rationalizing that, since we are generally trying to become a cloud company for all of our products. And so what we saw was that, realistically speaking, even with all of the innovations we've done through the years, that still the primary tool sets used within business objects are Webby, Crystal Classic, and Analysis for Office. And so as of the end of 4.3, you'll see with 2024 that those 3 are the products that we will continue to support. So there is some end of life, if you will, for Analysis for OLAP, for Live Office, for Lumira, and also for the UNV. So I know it always comes up with these webinars. When do we have to get off of UNVs? The end of 4.3. So if I go back in time, the end of 2027, with the priority 1 support end of 4.3 support, that is when you need to have moved totally to UNXs.
The funny thing on that is we've been talking about that, as you said, for years.
Absolutely.
And we've been telling people for a long time, you know what? you really should go to UNX. The reality is, people always push it because in fact, it is a big project. I mean, it's not a small project, and we tend to say, hey, you ought to do it during your migration. It's the right time to do it. And I get a lot of people didn't want to do it because it was a lot of work. So, but right now there is basically a clear end of life for that.
Right. And that's the thing too. We'd always said, we know it's coming soon, but now we know there is a clear moment. 2027 December is when UNVs will no longer be supported.
And in terms of what I see for BI 2024 here, I mean, it's, as you said, it's, the entire community is using number one, Webby, number two, Crystal Reports Classic, and then number three, Analysis for Office. So I guess that makes a lot of sense into that. So that just
it does
ties a lot of things, and for all the Lumiras, it makes a lot of sense to go to SAC, in fact, because there's actually a lot more there. And
look at you leading up to the next slide. So what for these various components that are end of lifing at the end of 4.3, what is our kind of perceived go-to solution within the SAP Obj or other analytics? And you're right, Lumira, SAP Analytics Cloud is the clear movement for that. For Crystal Enterprise, if anyone's using that out there, we're actually seeing that really the Venn diagram that we used to have of Crystal and Webby has really come closer to being more of a complete circle versus a Venn diagram. So we see that a lot of the Crystal Enterprise users out there actually kind of started to play with it, but then abandoned it for Webby anyway. And so we kind of look for Crystal Classic or Webby to replace that depending on your needs. Analysis for OLAP. SAC becomes kind of our go-to for that as well, because SAC is becoming more and more, well, it's always been a OLAP aware because of its connectivity to BW, but it's becoming more and more OLAP aware as well for native OLAP data sources other than BW as well. For Live Office, we do still have analysis for Office, and Live Office is really, it's one of those kind of, it's been out there for a long time, but most of our newer customers over the course of the last 10 years didn't even really know it was there. And so if you have been using it and you have a need to push out to Microsoft with BobJ, then we recommend using Webby Document OData Access that's been there as of Service Pack, that will be there as of Service Pack 2. One notion on the Universe Design Tool, right? It obviously becomes the IDT instead to do the UNXs, but one key thing is that even though we're moving to the UNXs, we are kind of eliminating the multi-source universe and the data federation that we have at the universe level. And instead, we're moving towards better data blending at the Webby or database level. And in fact, when Gregory shows you the data mode later on today, he'll talk about some of the newer things we're doing with blending there.
And it looks super modern. And additionally, later on during the day, I know we'll be talking about OData, because that's it's quite a big thing actually for the entire community. So
yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I have a question for you, Patrick.
Okay.
In the meantime, we have a question from Carmen. So just hold on. She's asking, is BobJ on the cloud? Is it SaaS, or how is it licensed?
So it's licensed like SaaS, but it's not strictly SaaS because we didn't build it in the cloud, right? So it's kind of a combination of platform as a service and infrastructure as a service that we run. But yes, the licensing is either named or concurrent and subscription-based monthly. And we'll actually get into that in the next section.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, one other thing too, the supported platforms is another key thing there. So we're seeing that our preferred OSs as we go into BI 2024 are going to be Windows and Linux only. We're going to deprecate AIX and Solaris.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. And today, I think most of the customers are, in fact, on Windows or Linux. So
certainly US, I think, is mostly Windows. We have a little more Linux kind of in Europe and some other spots.
Yeah, and I think the federal community, actually, there are quite a few deployments as well on.
Yes, they are. In fact, I was looking at their a Linux environment yesterday when I saw some 360 folders. So that would make you happy, Bruno. Yes, a lot of federal on Linux. Yeah,
always does. So okay, and also that means then for 2024, that basically means that Windows and Linux will be supported. So there is no
Correct.
discussion here. So
Correct.
it's pretty clear.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a nice thing too. You keep kind of harping on it. It's a great thing. We are, I think, for the first time also being as clear as possible, right? I think there's been a lot of nebulous, when do UNVs in? Does Bob J die? That kind of a thing. And so I do like that with the statement of direction and the way we're updating that more regularly now, it is extremely clear, and we are very clear on the dates and what does live on, what goes away, etc. So it lets you plan for your future installments.
And I tell you, that's so important. It was funny. Recently, I visited a customer, and then there was actually a competitor from SAP, MicroStrategy, not to mention them, that had visited them, and that would show a roadmap saying you guys need to go to us because Bob J is dead.
Right.
And to be frank, it's the type of thing I've been hearing on and on and on, actually since 4.2.
Well, MicroStrategy has been trying to say that we're dead since 2008 when we were acquired by SAP. So
yeah, that's always the long. And at the end of the day, well, we know where they are. So
right.
It's not really a big deal, but that's always quite interesting. So here with the roadmap with no end of life, that's actually pretty clear. So
Exactly.
It's safe to continue to invest on Bobj because it is continuing to be supported by SAP for a long time. And
Right.
also you want more modern through the dashboards, you can use SAC. So that's pretty cool.
And I will say this too, just from kind of an insider ball game perspective. We've seen there was a lot of resistance in Germany to continuing. They wanted to move to SAC only, but I think that really the determination of the customer base, like yourselves, really has convinced various levels of the power structure in Germany that Bob J should be here to stay. So that's all good news on your behalf as well.
Yeah, and there is a strong community. I mean, everybody,
Absolutely.
there are so many people using Bobj today, small deployments, mid-size, large deployments, and in reality, people love using Bobj. So
right. And again, it's not the sexy, shiny, new, innovative thing, but it does what it needs to do and has done it for decades. And people lose sight of that when they're trying to chase the next shiny object sometimes.
Gets the job done. That's the most
exactly.
important. So.
Absolutely. And really, I think that was it from the presentation side on that. So I'll go to my little questions hand there. And are there any other questions popping up right now?
Yes, are there questions from the audience here? So I've got, you've got any questions about BI 2024? Just hold on. Okay, well, I don't see, okay, what are the, okay, here. We got one question here.
Okay.
What three products were mentioned that may not have end of life? Webby, Crystal, and so what was the third one?
It's Webby, Crystal Classic, and Analysis for Office.
So I hope that answers your question. By the way, in terms of audience, I'd be interested to know which version of Bobj you guys are on, and then what type of report formats the audience is actually using today.
Actually, I'd be intrigued to see how many of you have moved to UNXs either in whole or in part.
Hey, what's your best guess there, Patrick?
I'm going to guess about 50%.
I think it's less than that.
Smaller. All right.
No,
you know me. I'm a glass half full guy, Bruno.
I think there was a lot of people that went to UNX actually with Snowflake.
Right.
I think as a 4.2 SP8, if I recall. But my guess is there are not that many people that are on UNX, but we'll see.
I don't think fully, but I have seen some webinars here and there where at least a significant chunk have started to play with the UNX more than a year ago.
Yeah, so hold on, I'll pop some other questions here. So we got a question from Darren who's asking, are there any innovations with Crystal Classic? Is that are there anything planned there?
So, every different release we do get little things here and there. I mean, Crystal's so mature and does what it does so well that, we're not seeing a whole lot of new things coming down the pike. But if there are new things you would like to see, then I would encourage you to use the ideas place for SAP, because I can tell you that quarterly that is looked at.
Okay, yeah. Additionally, that's actually a question from Jeremy about pricing. So that for the pricing in terms of PCE, we'll be talking about that on the next session.
Right.
And actually, there'll be Nathan Crook that will be on, and who can probably answer to some of that question. So we have another question here. Well, anyway, that's pretty basic from Gustav saying, would you recommend converting to UNX sooner or later? Well,
sooner.
Hey, you've got the answer here. Is you can still keep it for 4.3, but
right.
just go away as soon as possible, because it's not going to be support for much longer. So I hope that answers your question. Well, we got Noel here, who's mentioning, hey, he's moved to UNX 5 years ago. So he's
great. Wow.
That's actually, you were probably among the first ones. So
I would say early adopter, our hero.
You were an early adopter here. So and actually Noel is saying, hey, they're on 4.2 SP9, and then they're going to be moving to 4.3 SP2 early next year.
Okay, great.
Do you know actually what the release date of 4.3 SP3 is, Patrick?
It should be in December, so it should be this month, but I haven't seen the official date.
Well, Etienne, Noel here as well saying, hey, he's moving away from Crystal, and 95% of his reports are actually Webby.
Okay.
We've got an interesting question here about what's the end of life for data services 4.2. I don't know if you know.
So one nice thing there is that we've kept data services in parallel with BobJ. So at the end of data services 4.3, there will be a data services 2024 as well.
Okay. And by the way, I believe end of January, we are going to do an event with Patrick, with a customer, and also Maurizio that will be introduced later on about data services. So we'll talk about data services roadmap.
Right.
So, and then share the statement of direction as well, because there is actually a statement of direction for that. And there were a lot of questions from people when 4.3 was out, is 4.3, is there going to be a data services for that? Is going to be support, etc. Right. So a lot of these questions will be answered during that webinar. And
but a little tease, as much as BobJ is not dead, neither is data services. So that's a good.
And data services right behind in terms of architecture, in fact, I think uses business objects. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I guess,
there's some shared services that they use. Yeah.
Yeah, or at least that's what I've remembered on that. Can you share anything about, we got a question here about the migration path for going from UNV to UNX. Do you have any suggestions there, or is this something you
actually
want
I might punt back to you, the experts on this, since you do it more in real life than I have.
So you know what, we'll answer to that actually in 2 sessions, where we'll have Maurizio on, who's one of our senior solutions engineers, and who will address that. And we'll also take your name, and then we got some information that we can share where we've done some events in the past about how to go from UNV to UNX. And the good thing is, over the years, the process was a lot smoother. So there are issues in the early versions of 4.2, and as we go, and now with 4.3, it's a lot easier than what used to be. So I remember at a time with the first version of 4.2, it was challenging. And
it was. And we're not always great, but we do try to make it easier on every subsequent service pack for those little things like importing and migrating and lifecycle management.
And the reason I was bringing that is actually I saw there was a customer who's on, and I know there were issues at that time where they went to UNX, I think, with one of the first versions of 4.2, and it was not that simple. So we've got KJ.
Wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty.
No, I think in 30% of the cases there were issues, and it was
wow.
So, but I know since then it's quite clean. We've actually got KJ who mentioned, well, that's you. Then Data Services 4.3 SP1 was available last night.
Okay.
So I'm sure if he mentions that, I'm sure he's actually quite
happy about that.
Yeah. Because I know that was something that was expected from a lot of deployments that are depending on that. Let me see if there are some other questions here that we can address from the audience. Okay, here we got a question from Nadia. We currently are in 4.2 SP6. Okay, do you recommend us to go to 4.3 or to 4.2 SP9 as we have some UNVs?
I would say go to 4.3 myself, but again, I'll punt to see if you have any other on the ground truths about that, Bruno, from your experience.
I mean, we can talk with all the experts later, but I would agree with you. I would definitely go to 4.3 SP2. And
yes.
And actually, from what I've heard from customers, actually 4.3 SP2, there's been a lot of patches, et cetera, and things are actually getting pretty clean right now. So
yep.
Let me see if I've got some other questions here. Okay, I think. Okay, we are using 4.3. Are there any plans to enhance the BI workspace?
Not that I've seen, but again, if it's something that you have some thoughts on, then let's get them into the hands of product management. And certainly, I know it's not in Gregory's sweet spot because he's more of the webby guy, but Gregory may know when he's on later today as well if there are plans that I'm not aware of yet from Paris for enhancing BI workspaces.
Also, we've got Amar here that's asking, will BusinessObjects 2024 Webby include Lumira Designer as well?
No. So the Lumira line will end at the end of 4.3.
Okay. We've got another question here. Will Webby 2024 have some new feature? Do you know anything about that, or that's more?
That's all still in planning at this point.
Secret by Gregory.
Yeah, that's still top secret. But yes, I'm sure it will.
Yeah, and I see here Nadia's mentioning she's got some issues with 4.2 SP9 patch 11 with some bugs. And to be frank with you, Nadia, like 4.2 SP9, we've heard quite a few things on the latest patches. If you got some specific bugs, if you want to mention that in the chat box, and then we can address these with SAP later on, we'd be more than happy to support you with that. Okay, what else in terms of questions do we have here? Let me check here. Yeah, I saw a question earlier, actually from somebody from the audience, and sorry, I can't find the question here, but the customer was asking, hey, we are in 4.1, can we go straight to 4.3? So, or do they need to stop directly through, or did they have to do a stop in 4.2? Patrick?
I think you can go straight to 4.3, but it might be worth going to 4.2 initially. Again, I don't know what real life would say on that one, Bruno, but.
Okay. We've got a question here. What's the potential of new Webby version to connect with a hyperscaler, AWS, Google Cloud, Azure?
I'd say the potential for that is great because we are continually getting asked by customers like yourselves how we can, Redshift is probably the biggest question I get on a regular basis in terms of, how do we connect to that through Webby? And so I'm sure that we will be looking at the hyperscaler platforms as, more and more of a thing that we want to connect to. If you followed any of the 4.3 evolution webinars that Bruno's hosted, you'll see that we are continually trying to do more from both a OData perspective to connect, as well as having sort of native connectors to a lot of kind of the cloud data service data platforms.
Okay. We have another question from a known user on LinkedIn. Does SAP treat third-party cloud environments the same way, the same as on-prem? Yeah, I'm guessing maybe behind the question, so if you can be more specific, but I'm assuming the customer wants to know if he's able to move his BobJ on a hyperscaler.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So as you'll see in the PCE presentation shortly here, we do have Azure, AWS, and Google all as options for you for the PCE move. And then if you wanted to do any yourself, where you kind of brought the infrastructure as a service, then that's an option for you as well.
We've got a question from Minal asking, is there any utility from SAP to convert from UNV to UNX? As the number is huge, it's something that we at Wiiisdom 360, we're doing very well. And we can support you in that regards with some solutions to do that, because we know it's a big job. So of course, we'll support you for the conversion part. We'll support you for the reporting part, also to track what has been converted, and also to do some regression testing on that. So it's something we'd be more than happy to share with you, and probably our marketing folks will get back to you on that. Okay, we got time for, let's say, 2 or 3 more questions.
Okay.
Okay, here we got a question from Garrett. What are your thoughts on using HANA views directly in Webby instead of UNX?
It's certainly a more efficient and performant way to use it. However, I still like the notion of the universe as intermediary layer to make it simple for the end user population. I feel like the ability to kind of pseudo model within the universe, again, as an intermediary between the users and the HANA layer is still a powerful thing. But there are some performance gains or losses when you go with that. Honestly, I don't, and we don't have a whole lot of evidence in terms of how most customers are doing it. So we certainly know who owns HANA and we know who owns BusinessObjects, but we don't have insight into how they are connecting. So I can't really say with authority that I think direct HANA connection is the most prevalent or not.
Okay. Well, I think we've answered quite a few questions. There's still some more coming.